Welcome to Save the High Street Waltham Forest and our latest webinar, Creating Effective Email Campaigns for Your Local Business, one of our masterclass series. I'm Michael Wheaton and I head the High Street Advisory Board. I'll make a few introductory points before introducing today's expert. If you have questions for us, please pop them in the chat box, which you will find right in the middle at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to your questions once we've had the presentation. Now, this is one of 20 webinars as part of a 10-week program designed to support high street businesses in Waltham Forest as they reopen, recover and reimagine their roles for the post-COVID future. All of the webinars are available as recordings after the event through our Waltham Forest landing page. Local businesses have been signing up for the programme and completing a detailed health check survey, identifying for us subjects which are most important right now for Waltham Forest businesses. And this webinar is one of the fruits of that process. Now, Save the High Street exists to save the high street one business and one good idea at a time. So if you go away today with just one new idea, we would count that a success, but we're hoping for a lot more. I've read this presentation, I've looked over it, and I know it's packed with valuable information, so there's a very good chance you will. And today, as I said, we're looking at creative, effective email campaigns for your local business. Now, email is something that almost all of us use, and it's been around for nearly half a century. I think its full 50-year anniversary takes place next year. So it's been part of our business and social environment for many of us, for most of us, for most, if not all of our working lives. And you might say it's not the shiniest, newest thing in the block, but it retains a number of unique strengths as a way of communicating, not the least of which, it seems to me, is it's direct. It doesn't rely on the algorithms of some huge tech business to decide whether your email gets where you want it to be. So today, we're delighted to have with us Emma Gray, who knows better than anyone the value and power of email to achieve your business goals. Emma, the screen is yours. Over to you.
Hi there, let me just share my screen with you, get us up and running. Okay, you should be able to see that now. I'll let Michael interrupt me if you can't. So thanks for that introduction. Just to give a bit of background about myself, my name's Emma. I work with small to medium businesses, some online, but largely in person, either high street businesses, small market traders, that kind of thing, on digital marketing in general. But the platforms I really like and the channels I really like are email marketing, content marketing, SEO. So really the ones, like Michael says, that don't rely on those sort of algorithms, well, some algorithms there, but they're a bit more what we call owned channels. So I'm going to dive straight in and we'll start looking at some of the things you can do with email. So we'll look today at why you should think about email marketing, getting started, how you start building a list, which some of you may have done already, but you might find some good tips there either way, content strategy, branding, and finally measuring and optimizing, which is more of that ongoing process, of course, that you can't really start doing yet, but you can certainly start to think about how you'll measure the success of your emails. So I feel like email slips under the radar a little bit, it gets a bit overshadowed by social media. So I just want to spend a couple of minutes at the beginning thinking about why email marketing is such a great channel and why it's worth your effort really, as well as, you know, your time, potentially money as well. So firstly, email gets you in regular communication with your customers and potential customers. And as Michael said, email is something all of us or most of us use daily, whether that's for work, to speak to our family and friends, or to hear from businesses like yours. It's also your own marketing channel. So you're not really at the whim of those social algorithms, and you're not putting all of your eggs into, say, the Instagram basket, the Facebook basket, as it were. So you're not relying on, you know, if something changes there overnight. Your email is your contacts, your content. It's something you can control. And even if you move between platforms, you can take that list and those people with you. Email also gives you options to sort of tailor your communications to different audiences, which we'll talk about a bit later on. And probably the one you're most interested in is performance. And because you're tapping into an already engaged audience, that could be existing customers, it could be people who you have spoken to before and just are interested in your business. It could be people who've just been on your website for 5 minutes, but either way, they're a little bit more engaged than the random person on the internet or digital street. So it can often have really great engagement and conversion rates, and particularly at key times such as the run up to Christmas, which we're arguably starting in now, when you're really fighting for visibility on other channels, having that direct communication with your customers, that direct line to them, that access to their inbox almost, is really important way to keep that regular communication going and not get overshadowed by everything else that's going on say, you know, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever else you might be online. So to think about some of the use cases, firstly, staying in touch. So that's the basics of email marketing. You are staying in touch with your existing customers, interested parties, letting them know what's going on about new products, new services, understanding the updates they might find interesting. A longer term goal might be to build a sense of community. So people feel valued as a customer, that they feel a personal connection with your brand. And this comes from things that work really well in email, like being first to hear news. You can offer that as a bit of an incentive that the people on your email list will be the first to find out about things. Things like pre-sales, exclusive offers, behind the scenes content, and just a bit of your business personality as well. So they feel like they're really part of an exclusive club almost of your brand supporters. And then finally, adding value. So make customers want to engage with you more because they've opened your emails once, twice, 3 times before, and they've connected with the content in some way. And I'm sure as a customer, you've had emails you've subscribed to where you've maybe unsubscribed a couple of weeks later or almost straight away. And you've had others that you've kept and you've opened month after month, week after week, year after year almost. Because you found that content useful. So that's what you're trying to be to your customers. It's not going to work for every single person who signs up. I haven't seen a business yet who's managed to have 100% keeping subscribers rate. You will have some people who drop off, but the idea is to make sure you understand your target customers and how you can add value for them specifically. So I'm aware that we probably have a bit of a mixture of people who are just vaguely interested in email, who are just here to find out about it, people who've maybe started already, and maybe people who are already doing email marketing want to learn how to improve or see if they're on the right track. But I do want to spend a bit of time talking about just how you can get started. And hopefully for those of you who are already a bit further into this process, you might find this a useful sort of checklist to work through as well. So the first step is choosing your platform, or maybe even reassessing your platform if you're already using one, getting set up on that, all the logistics and the boring stuff, choosing or building your template and setting up your sign up form. So let's go a bit more into each of these. The number one question that I get asked about email marketing, especially from smaller businesses, is which platform they should use. I actually used to answer this, and I used to pretty confidently say MailChimp, use MailChimp to any small to medium sized business. Over the last year or so, though, they've made some changes to their free plan. So I still think they're great, but I now think they're a bit more equivalent. There's some really great and also newer platforms out there. So I think there's a lot of competition in terms of email platforms, and it's really about finding the one that has the right features for you, has the right pricing level for you, of course, and also that feels the most intuitive. So what I would recommend is signing up to a free plan or trial with a couple of them, maybe 2 or 3. You don't have to put too much effort or time into it. Maybe just spend 20 minutes on each of them just to figure out which one might be the best fit for you and which one you find kind of clicks with you most. I've highlighted 3 here that I see small to medium-sized businesses use a lot, which are MailChimp, already mentioned, MailerLite and Constant Contact. There are a lot out there. So do have a look around, and within each of those they also have different plans too, so you can start with either the free or the lower price one, or the free trial, and kind of build on that as you need more features. Or you might go straight in and say, I know what I want from this, then I'm going to pay for the pro plan straight away. So have a look at each of those and the different features they have at different tiers of their pricing plan. The other thing to think about is if you're already running email marketing, but you're not using an email platform, you're just sending it out from your email address or your normal email account, whether that's a business one or a personal one, is consider moving over to an actual platform. We'll talk about GDPR in a bit, which is one of the big reasons to do this, because it's a much better and more organized way to manage your contact list. But also you get those extra features like the design features, things like tracking as well, that you just can't get from sending an email to people from your actual regular email account. So I would definitely recommend looking at some of these platforms to figure out which one best fits you. So the setup part obviously depends quite a bit on the platform that you've chosen, but the basics are choosing your plan. So if you're starting from scratch, as I said, I'd recommend the free or the lowest cost version or the free trial, and just scale up as you need either additional capacity or additional features. So some of them have caps, for example, on how many emails you can send or how many subscribers you can have before they bump you up to the next sort of cost tier. Others, it's more about features, some it's a mixture. So really looking and say, what do I need at the beginning? You can always start with a minimum. You can always increase your plan. They're never going to turn down extra money from you, but you might not be able to sort of drop your plan down without losing features later. So go in with the low one and you can always build up. Set up any settings. So that's just the basics, like filling in your business name and address, all of that stuff, the behind the scenes account stuff, as well as of course your payment details, and also setting up any access. So if you have a business partner, a marketing person, a staff member, team, who will be using the account as well. Don't give them your password. All of the major email marketing platforms have the ability for them to sign in with their own accounts, which means you're managing the email account, but they're able to log in and do whatever you give them access to do. So you could have someone else who is, say, an admin, other people who can just edit content and give people different levels of control. So that gives you control long term, you know, staff change, or if you need to hire someone to do email marketing, or you want to hand it over to someone else, you've got that control of the account and no one's going to sort of change the password and lock you out accidentally. Then you can think about choosing your template or design. There's normally a library of free and potentially premium templates. You can also buy templates elsewhere, or you can consider the more premium model of working with a designer. So it could be someone you've worked with on, for example, a website. You'll often find the same agencies or companies or freelancers will do both. So you can really make sure that it's on brand and coordinated with your website. We'll talk a bit about design and branding later, but it's really important to make sure it looks professional. You can get a really professional looking email with free templates though. It's just whether it fits your brand. If you can change, say, the branding colors or the fonts to match, that's going to help it look a lot more consistent. And then you need to set up your sign-up forms. So think about what information you need to start collecting and how you can customize that. Again, you can normally brand those forms depending on the features that your platform has to make it blend in nicely with your website, or you can set up sort of an HTML form that you can embed on your website, or integrations with things like Facebook, for example. So this is an example of how a sign-up form can look. This is actually just a mock-up one. It might be a real one, actually. I can't remember when I did this. I think this might be a real one from our client. So this is from MailChimp, this particular one, but to be honest, you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at it because most of the platforms let you do something very, very similar looking. So you can see a couple of the different options on the left here. So you can create standalone pages, you can create integrated forms, all sorts of forms that work in different places. Think about what information you need to collect. So email address and name fields are usually pretty essential. I mean, obviously the email address is a bare minimum, but is there anything else that will help you with targeting later? So for example, in this one, I've included a nearest shop field. They can select, say, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Birmingham. So if you do have multiple locations, that could be an option. And then later on, that means we can send out location specific offers to everyone who selected, say, Liverpool when they filled in the form. Or news or events. You'll see bigger businesses doing this really well, really cleverly, but I think it's something that smaller businesses don't realize they can do as well. So we're going to talk about actually building that list. Once you've got the sign up form, you need to get people to actually use it. And again, some of you may have already started, some of you may be looking at starting now as the part of the run up to Christmas. If you are looking at using this as part of your Christmas strategy, I'd be looking at starting the list building process in the next couple of weeks, so no pressure. Of course, you can start it later, but you need to have enough people on your list to make it worth you sitting down and writing or creating the email in the first place, which means that you really need to start collecting it soon-ish so you can start sending those emails when that peak time hits. So where you can get sign-ups, well, I'm sure as a customer you've signed up to email newsletters before, and you've probably done that in a few different places. So you might have done that by already being in contact with someone. So if you've got an existing list, you need to check it's fit for purpose and that it's still relevant. So if it's been dormant for a while, maybe you started email marketing a couple of years ago, maybe your business has changed since then, either significantly or just a little bit. Maybe it's just really old information. So you might want to start from scratch, or at least just clean it up a little bit. You also need to check it's GDPR compliant, which we'll come on to shortly, but it's less likely if you've had these email addresses sitting around for a while, it's less likely that those people will still be interested. You know, they might have moved out of area, they might have changed their email address. If they are still around, then they might not be interested in your business anymore. So you need to really think about, is this useful information? How old is it? Are these people still going to want to hear from me? Or are they going to be like, when did I sign up for this? I don't remember this company at all. The next sources, and probably the most obvious ones and probably the easiest ones to get started with, are your online channels. So if you have a website already, you'll seen these everywhere, sign up forms on your website, fairly common, and they can capture people who are already browsing, already interested, already looking at information about your business. You can also capture as they're going through some kind of process. So maybe they are making a booking at your restaurant, maybe they're buying something from your online shop. What you can't do is add people automatically to your email list, but there's no reason you can't add a section as part of that process saying, would you like to hear from us about blah, 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 and get them to sign up there as well. You can also look at integrations with social channels, any other online platforms you might have, like YouTube, for example. Maybe you've got an Etsy shop as a smaller business to go alongside your town centre shop, or maybe you're a cafe, but you've also got another business that's kind of related, like a wholesale business. So you might have different sources. So make sure you're covering every online platform you have and directing people through to that sign up form. And then your offline channels too. So if you've got a space that people come into, whether that's a permanent one like a shop or a restaurant or a cafe, whether that's a pop-up one like an event or a market, or if you're in a space with other people, want to work with quite a lot of things like yoga studios, for example. So they're not there permanently, but there's no reason when you're there, you can't just have something reminding people to sign up. So if you've got a permanent space, you can have a sign up sheet, the old-fashioned clipboard approach, or you can also ask people at point of sale if they want to sign up and do that yourself, so have some kind of system at till. Or you could also just have a sign telling people that you're online, you've got email marketing, and asking them to go to your website to sign up too. So just that little nudge and let people know where they can find out more about your business. If it's more of a temporary sort of space that you're not in all the time, having some sort of signage can help at a market stall, or just having something on the wall that you can take down easily. The same way you direct people to your social media channels too. And think about why you would sign up. So you can think about this for yourself. Why would you sign up to your own newsletter? Why have you signed up for others? Some of the reasons here, I'm sure there are plenty of others. Being the first to know about things, that exclusivity feeling I mentioned earlier. Getting information, so just having updates. That's especially, I'd say this year, I know I've subscribed to a lot of email marketing lists this year for businesses I like, because I didn't necessarily know when they were reopening or what was going on. So it's a great way for you to get that up-to-date information. So that could be enough of a reason in itself. Could be things like offers, whether that's an introductory offer when they first sign up, or it could be that they're going to get regular offers through the newsletter. Brand loyalty, shared values, so just the reason they like your brand in the first place might be why they want to hear more about it. And also for entertainment, if you've got something maybe informative or funny in the content itself. So what you can do is tell people about this incentive at sign up. So we've got some mixed examples here. You can see the Art House one on the left gives a pretty extensive list of the kind of information you'll be getting. So this is more of that information incentive. You'll be the first to find out about events, about things we've got going on. Ace and Tate, which is the blue one at the top, use words like VIP, newest, special, near you. So they build that feeling of community and you're being part of something by signing up. That orangey middle one is one of my favourite local businesses here in Manchester, and they keep it pretty simple, just receive news of our latest products and events. So again, very information based. And the bottom black one, that's a London interiors business, and they tell us kind of what to expect. So interiors inspo, but also offering a one-off offer incentive, 10% off your first online sale too. So that could just as easily be 10% off when you come into store. And the idea is when they sign up, you set up an automated welcome email so they receive that voucher or code that they can use on your shop or when they come in. The point of sign-up's also where you get to find out more about your customers, and it's really hard to gather this information afterwards. So you need to think about, when you're setting up the sign-up form, what you need to complete. If you add it in later, you might end up with half of your list have just filled in their name and email address, and then everyone who signed up, say after November, has this other field as well, so it can get a bit messy. So although things can change later, try and think from the beginning about what you might want to collect. This example is from ASOS. You can see they're collecting date of birth, they're collecting information about if the customer's interested in women's wear or menswear, and then some more detailed opt-in information. So saying, what do you want to hear about? This then allows them to group customers and send more tailored content. So you can say, well, we know who wants to hear about discounts and sales, so we're just going to send them this information. Other people might want to hear about menswear and exclusives, so we'll send them that combination. And there might be others who just receive everything. So think about how this could apply to your own business. You could ask about people's nearest location, that example from earlier, if you have more than one. Even if they're in the same place, I've seen that before quite often where they say, which is your nearest store, which is your nearest cafe, so they can send you a bit more tailored news. Could be basic demographic information like women's wear or menswear here. And note that they don't ask if they're men or women, because that's a slightly different question. They ask women's wear or menswear, which one are you interested in? So I think that's important to think about here too. You might have separate groups for, say, wholesale and end customers. If you've got different sort of parts of your business, that can be a great way to group people and say, right, which of these are you interested in? Because I, as your end customer, might not want to hear about information for your B2B customers and vice versa. So you can use this to make sure you're figuring out who is who. And if your email platform's integrated with your website, it takes a bit more work, but you can build in other sort of automated groups, such as people who've previously purchased online, the types of products people have looked at. So this requires an integration between your e-commerce platform and your email provider. And it takes a bit more setup, but it means you don't have to ask about that when they're signing up, because it'll automatically do it for you. We can't talk about email marketing without mentioning GDPR. I have to say I'm not giving legal advice here. I'm definitely not qualified to do that. But a couple of tips I would say. Firstly, understand what your obligations are. Look at resources from the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office. If you've got a website already and you've done anything with general digital marketing, you've probably already heard of them, but very important. And they're the resource really to look at. They've got some great resources there to understand what you're supposed to be doing in the first place. I've heard people say that they think they don't have to follow the rules because they're only small, or I'm only emailing 100 people, or because of Brexit or whatever other reason, and that's not the case. It applies to all businesses that have customers in the EU. And we're keeping this anyway post-Brexit because it already ties into our own Data Protection Act. So really important for you to understand it. The second tip would be to use a platform that already has some GDPR tools built in. So tools for getting consent, those subscriber forms, options for people to unsubscribe or edit their permissions or information themselves. That's going to save you a lot of work. And things like double opt-in. So I'm sure you've seen this before when you sign up to something, and as well as signing up using the form, they then send you an email and you have to click a button there to verify and to complete the sign up process. So that allows you to prove that you're checking that the people signing up actually own those email addresses. And remember that customers have to explicitly consent to receive email marketing. There are some alternatives to consent in some cases called legitimate interest. But if you're relying on that, again, you need to make sure you 100% understand it. And otherwise, and for most of you, it's likely that you're going to need consent from customers to send them email marketing. And you also need to keep a record of that consent too. So whether that's copies of the clipboards where people have been signing up, or if you're using an online platform, they'll obviously record the sign up time and date and location for you too, the majority of them. So that saves you an extra record keeping job. So the next and slightly more fun step is starting to think about your actual content. So you can set yourself, say, a minimum number of subscribers as a target, or maybe just a target date, and say, right, when I have 50 people, or when it gets to 1st of November, I'm going to start sending emails. And then you're ready to start thinking about the content for your first email, but also your longer term content strategy. So think about how often you'll send emails. For most small businesses, I'd recommend anywhere from weekly to once a month, but I've absolutely seen businesses do brilliant email marketing on very sporadic schedules. It just makes it harder to plan, but if you're the kind of business that wants to send an email now and then another one in 4 months and then one a week after, it doesn't mean that your emails aren't going to work. It's just going to make it harder for you to plan and manage. So think about how often you have new and valuable content to share, and also when you will send. Some bigger businesses send me, say, 3 emails a week, but that's because they have enough stuff to talk about, and they also have a big enough team to do that. Most of the people I work with go for once every 2 weeks. I would say that's probably the most common, or once a month, with once a week in some cases where it's, maybe a shop that's regularly getting in new products, or maybe it's a cafe that regularly changes its menu or has specials or has events on normally. So think about for yourself, how often do you have something new to talk about? What you don't want to end up doing is repeating content week after week, because people will stop opening it. So make sure you've got something new to say, and if that means only doing this once a month or once every 6 weeks, that's better than trying to make yourself do it every week and running out of things to say. So think about what content you'll actually include. Do you have a set structure or template? That's something I would recommend. So you can think about, right, what's the headline content for this particular week or this particular email? What else am I going to include? Maybe you've got a list of events you send weekly, or you've got a section where you put your product images, and it makes it easier for you to just swap those out for a different type of content each week. So that comes in when you're actually building the design side of your email too. And you can also think about your different groups of customers. So if you have decided you're going to send, say, location specific or menswear versus womenswear emails, you might need to create either 2 completely separate emails, or maybe 2 versions of the same email with slightly different variations on one section. You don't necessarily have to do that every time, but think about that if you're, putting together a womenswear email, be aware of which group that's going to, just to use that ASOS example. And then think about how, this is the less exciting stuff, but probably the most important thing to actually get it done, logistics. So who's taking responsibility for this, actually putting it together, sending it out? Which other team members need to be involved? So you might be a 1-person business. You might be working with a massive team. You might be working with, say, a marketing manager within your company, or you might have a business partner. Who's actually taking responsibility for, firstly, gathering the information, and secondly, putting it all together and sending out the email itself. That might be 1 person managing the whole thing, or it might be a few different people doing different parts, in which case you need a bit of coordination there. There are as many different types of content as there are businesses, but here are some ideas. So you've got industry insights, news, behind the scenes, so giving a bit of that personality. Themed content can be a great one. I see this all the time, done really, really well, and it gives you, I think, a nice structure to think about content too. You've got tips, so if you've got something that's very industry specific, I've seen that with Ace and Tate, I think it was the example from earlier. So they're an opticians or eyewear brand, and I've seen them give sort of tips in their newsletter. So it doesn't have to be that you're a B2B business to do that. You can do that for consumers too. I've also seen like styling guides from interiors companies too. So you can really tailor this around your products or your services to make sure it's interesting for people who are your target audience. So this is an example from the Blue Coat in Liverpool. They chose a theme of green spaces. So that was based around a current, at that time, it was an online exhibition they had on, where they included something about their garden, a family activity idea around green spaces, and even a themed playlist of music around the theme of green spaces too. This one's from Roman Road, and they shared a mixture of blog posts, community events, and news. So this is very news focused, and they do this weekly. So you can see how it's very easy for them to swap out, the community events this week, they keep the same template and just switch them for next week's events. And then product focused is what most product-based businesses will obviously do. And you can build this in like IKEA and go for something that's a bit less salesy. So they've gone for actually, it's themed on products. This was a mindfulness one, which I think was in April or May, it must have been. And I really like this one, so I've kept it in, but include links to blog posts and style guides. So they obviously are including IKEA products in here. You can see one in the picture, but it's doesn't feel as salesy, and you can see the same with sort of clothes shops. They'll do styled sort of images. It's not like your catalog style images of white backgrounds and just the products, really sort of lifestyle images to make it feel a bit more a bit more themed and a bit less product salesy. In terms of actually generating ideas, think about where you can get your existing content from. So you've got blog posts, videos, social media, anything you're creating already. What can you take and integrate into your emails? You might also curate content from elsewhere. So a great video you've seen, you know, as long as you're not claiming it as your own, you can link out to the sources. You might have suppliers, partners. One great thing I've seen recently is neighbors. So people who are talking about their neighbors in the street and saying sort of, go and visit these people, or these people that we've worked with. So that's a really nice way to create that community feel as well. And you can also get trending topics from within your industry. So look at industry news, tools like Google Trends, obviously the general news, and things like national and international days can be great for picking out those themes. Like it's, you know, National Apple Day. So here's our Apple themed things we have on the menu this week. As long as it doesn't feel too much like you're trying to shoehorn your business in, that can work really well. And in terms of planning, I would think about working at least 2 to 3 newsletters ahead. I put usually here because, of course, things are changing a lot more at the moment. So it might be that you don't have it 100% set in stone, but maybe you can plan ahead and then leave it to be a little bit adaptable if you have any news that you need to share along the way. I think that's worked really well for most people I've worked with this year, is just having a basic plan, but also being really adaptable and flexible as well. Setting deadlines for each piece of content needed can be really helpful if you're working with other people. So, you know, if you want to include a new product range, you need to make sure that you've got the photos. So whoever's in charge of taking the photos maybe needs to get those to you 2 days before you sit down to write the email. So you can set people deadlines, be strict about it, have backup content if things don't come through, and try and use some kind of shared tool or calendar for planning. I love Trello, but you can also use really anything that people can collaborate on. So something like Google Docs, Microsoft Office, anything that you already use within your business is a good idea, just to have track all those sorts of dates and things you might need to plan together. And then in terms of your brand, think about how you can make sure it's consistent across your tone of voice, visual style, and across different channels too. So your tone of voice, you're thinking about your personality. These are all things you might have thought about before in terms of your website or social media. So use that same thing you've come up with there. Even if you haven't sat down to think about it, look at your own, say, social posts, think what your tone of voice is and how you can apply that to email. Read through content that's already on your website, what kind of tone comes across there. Think about your values. So for example, I'm subscribed to a lot of sort of eco-friendly brands, and they all talk about that a lot in their newsletters because they know that their customers share those values as well. So whatever that value is for you, it could be something like being the cheapest, in which case your newsletter might be very price focused. It could be that you're a local business, it could be quality, and make sure that's coming across too. And think about creating a style guide if you're working with more than one person. It can be great for yourself, but it's essential, I would say, if you are outsourcing or if you've got different people might be writing from week to week. So words to use and avoid, general tone, and any guidelines in terms of images as well. And your visual style, again, if you've got a business already, you've already thought about this, you've probably got your logo, you've got some colors, some fonts, create kind of a mood board or a color palette. So you can give this either to a designer or create it yourself in whatever email platform you're using, just to make sure it's all consistent. And this will help to make sure it all looks consistent. So if I go from your Facebook to your shop itself in person, to your website, to your email, it should feel like it's all part of the same business. So the tone and the visual branding will really help with that. You can also help to guide people between the platforms for consistency. So have social icons in your email newsletter, tell people on Instagram about your email marketing, and just guide people between the various different online places that you have. And try and match to current campaigns and imagery. So if you're talking about, say, your Christmas campaign and you've had photos taken you're using on Instagram, use those same images or images from the same shoots on your email too, because it will make it sort of recognizable when people see that across different channels. In terms of measuring, we're just going to touch on this because, as I said before, this is something you can't start doing until you started sending emails. But you really want to know, you're putting all this stuff, time, energy, planning and money into your email. What are you getting out of it? Some of the metrics to look at, you've got your open rate, which is the percentage of people who have actually opened your email. And that, as I said before, is one of the great reasons to use an email marketing provider, because it can actually give you and will track this information. Every email marketing platform I've ever seen does this automatically. You don't have to activate it or anything. It's built in, and it's normally one of the first things you see when you log into sort of your dashboard too. So you can see how many people have opened and when, and track obviously across different weeks or different emails which one's working best, and see if you can spot any patterns there. You can also track bounces to make sure if someone deletes their email or hasn't opened for ages, or if it's not arriving in their inbox, after a while you can either automatically or manually get rid of that person just to keep that list nice and clean. Your click rate, so that's the number of people or the percentage of people who've actually clicked on links within your email. So again, that's tracked automatically by your email marketing provider. And then conversions is a little trickier because you might be sending people in store. It's really hard to then say, where did you hear about us? Was it, they might not remember exactly that they opened your email. If you're doing it online, so sending people to your online shop or to a booking system, that can be a bit easier to track. So look for integrations there between email marketing and your other platforms to see what's available. Or you might be able to pull it into something like Google Analytics, for example, and track email performance there too. And then the ongoing process is really seeing what's working, testing it, and then adapting. So identify which emails have helped you to achieve your goals the most. So which ones led to the most conversions, which ones had the best open rate, testing different subject lines, different types of content, changing your design. A lot of the platforms also have A/B testing, so you can send out two very similar but slightly different versions of the same email and see which one works best. So that's a great feature to make use of. And then adapting, of course, based on whatever you've learned as you go. And this is an ongoing process because what works now might be different to what works in 6 months or a year's time. So my tips for you getting started are taking some time to get set up right now, whether you're looking at starting it immediately or you're just looking in a couple of months or a few months. Take that time to play around with some platforms and start building your list. Think about segmentation. As I said, that's much easier to do from the beginning than to try and retrofit it afterwards. And think about when you might want to send your first email. So if you're looking at doing this in the run up to Christmas, that's going to be fairly soon. And in the future, you can just carry on building that list. Think about sending regular emails to your different groups. Think about your goals for different campaigns or different times of the year. Sharing anything you have coming up and doing that testing and sort of optimizing process as well. So hopefully that gives you a few things to think about, and I will hand back over to Michael now to see if we've had any questions, since I can't see if anything has come up. So Michael, do we have anything to talk about here?
We certainly do, yeah. I mean, I think it always seems to me that email is kind of easy to do, but difficult to do well. I certainly think I don't necessarily do it as well as I could. I had some specific questions for you, Emma. One is about personalization. I see a lot of email which isn't personalized at all. Hi there. And which annoys me. Anyway, and I see others which are not only personalized in at the head of the email, but actually in the subject line as well. Is there, is there a significant difference between the effectiveness of one or the other there, or do people just not do it sometimes because they haven't got the data?
Yeah, usually it's either because they don't know how to do it or because they don't have the data. And we've all seen those fails, I think, as well, where someone's tried to personalize, but I do this quite a lot. I sign up with just the letter E instead of my full name. So I'll get emails saying, hi, E, and it looks a bit silly. So I think people are scared of that sometimes, but it can have a massive impact on open rates if you include it in your subject line. I saw a great example recently someone shared with me of a pet service business. I think might have been a vet actually, and they actually include the name of the person's pet, so they get people to fill that in, and they would say, here's Rollo's monthly exercise plan or something, and the open rates there, I imagine, are pretty great because people love to talk about their pets. So having those personalized elements, and it doesn't have to be someone's name as well. It can be IKEA do this really well with their locations, so I'll get their general newsletter, but because I've said I'm near the Manchester store, they also send me emails that say in the subject line, here's your Manchester offers and events. And I'm much more likely to then click on that because I know it's going to be super relevant to me. Same with the ASOS example, the women's wear versus menswear. So it doesn't have to be someone's name if you don't have that data. What other data do you have so you can tailor or personalize it a bit? Because that can really help with those open rates and getting people to keep opening your emails week after week.
We have the question there, but I just wanted to come back to it. One of the things which is different about email, surely, is that we see a long list of subjects. But actually, if that doesn't engage us, we never get to see the rest of it, do we? Presumably you would recommend spending quite a lot of time on getting that bit just right, whether it's personalized or not.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where the testing comes in. I think that A/B testing, sending the exact same email, but with 3 or 4 different subject lines. A lot of people will say as well, like tips for your email subject line, but it's so dependent on your audience. So, you know, you'll see a case study that says using emojis will increase your open rate by 10%. And yeah, it might have done for that particular audience, doesn't mean it will for your audience. So testing and using those tests to see what works best can work really well, and just to start building your own data. So it's not something you necessarily will do straight away, but maybe once you're in the swing of things, start to say, right, this week I'm going to test these 2 different phrasings, or maybe try personalization in one and not in the other, and just see for your own audience what makes them open, because that's going to be different for different groups of people.
And is that also true of something you touched on earlier, times of day and specific days of the week and so forth? Or does that vary from market to market? I mean, people have to find out for themselves what works, and that 8 o'clock in the morning is definitely the time. So when people start work, if they're dealing with a business audience, it's waiting for them when they begin. That kind of, you would take that kind of approach and A/B test that as well?
Yeah, and that's something I think with opening, it's almost easier to test because you don't necessarily have to, you can run a test, but you can also just see, most of the email marketing providers give you sort of a graph you can look at. So you might send it at 7 a.m, but you can see actually most people don't open it till 10. So maybe next time you send it at 10, so you're at the top of their inbox when they go to it. So it's kind of an easier thing to track for your audience, but it's very much the same as the question, you know, what time should I post on social media, which is, well, if you're talking to students versus people who are working versus people in different countries, you're going to need to find that out for your own audience. So using those platforms that give you that data is really important.
So the first email which was sent, I believe, in 1971 was just a bit of text. A lot of people approach email as purely a textual matter, but others dress it up hugely with pictures. Is it a sort of horses for courses with specific markets? So particular types of thing you might want to talk about are very visual. Is there any, are emails with pictures in more successful generally than just straightforward textual ones, simply?
Yeah, I think it does depend on industry. I know for a fact I'm subscribed to a lot of food related ones, and for that you 100% want to have an image in there. That's going to be the thing that grabs people's attention. You do need to be careful though. I think, like you said, a lot of people dress it up almost too much. So be careful about things like the size of your images, if that's going to slow things down. Make sure you're putting in any alt text. So there'll normally be a box for that when you upload an image on your email provider. So if the image doesn't load, they can see if there was any crucial information in there, they can still see that. And also make sure if you're including images that you're not including them instead of text. So make sure you're not putting all your text on an image, because the text then won't be readable if someone's using, you know, it could be on their phone, it could be on a tablet. We don't know what devices your potential customers are using, so you need to make sure it's still accessible for everyone too. But images definitely for a lot of industries can really grab people's attention.
But you're right there. I mean, I habitually have image automatic preview turned off in my email client, so I would never see it. I rely entirely on the alt tags to decide whether I actually want to have a look at the images in that particular email. I don't know why I do that, but I do.
I do that as well. And if you've got a big banner that says 10% off at the top and that message isn't anywhere else, then people like you and me are going to miss that potentially too. So that alt text is really important.
We had a question in from Peter. Hello, what is the name of email tracker? Thanks. Yes, can you pick that up? I can't remember what it was exactly.
I'm not sure, because most of the platforms have their own, like the 3 I mentioned, and most of the big ones have their own inbuilt tracking. So you might not even need another tracking platform. The other tracking, I would say you'll need
to do that for you or something, yeah?
Yes, they have a dashboard built in, and what you get usually depends on which tier of the plan you're paying for. So the more you pay, the more data you'll get. But the basic level tend to have that sort of open rates, bounce rates, click rates, all of that stuff built in. In terms of third-party trackers, you might need things like, if you're directing people to your website a lot, web analytics tracking, so things like Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics. So you can tie the 2 together and say, right, people coming from email, what are they doing once they get to my website? So it's not essential, but it's great if that's one of your goals, is to increase traffic to your site. If you're trying to send people in store, the tracking becomes a lot more difficult, and it more relies on people remembering where they've heard about you and if you're asking them that.
One very quick final question then. having put all of this work and love and craft and thought and time and money into it, how do we make sure, as far as is possible, we don't just end up in somebody's spam filter?
Yeah, it's kind of a two-sided thing. So a lot of the sort of signals that email clients, so Outlook, Gmail, whatever else people are using, rely on, they come from the users themselves. So things like if they mark you as not spam, if they add you to their address book, if they open your emails, if they reply to your emails, there's not a lot you can do to control that. There are some things you can do yourself. So firstly, sending from a name, so making sure the name that comes from the sort of from name is recognizable. I've seen that a lot. I subscribe to an email, then I get an email from Jenny, and I'm like, who's Jenny? Right. So if I send an email from Emma, people aren't necessarily going to open it. If I say Emma from blah blah blah, or, Michael from Save the High Street, people know who that's coming from. So that helps with the open rates. If you can get them to open that first email, that's going to count for a lot in terms of that email landing in their inbox in future. You might also want to remind people when they first sign up, have something at the end, say thanks for signing up. Don't forget to check your spam and mark as not spam, so those reminders can help. Things like avoiding spam trigger words. You can find lists of these if you Google email marketing spam trigger words or something like that. The problem is that no companies ever say, yes, that's our list, that's not confirmed, but there are lots of sort of spammy words that you can avoid. The other things really are just making sure that you're trying to get those open rates as high as possible. And also sending from your own domain can help too, because a lot of spammers will of course use the free email accounts. You're using your business one. Firstly, it's recognizable for the user, and secondly, potentially for email providers, they can see that you're more likely to be a real emailer than a spammer.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We are right at the end of the time now. I always learn a lot about email, which just tells me I should be paying more attention. I've been doing it long enough, but not well enough. So thank you very much for that, Emma. And thank everyone for coming along today. I hope you found that useful. No, I did. If you did, please tell others about this series. The recording of today's webinar and the details of past and future events can all be found on the homepage of savethehighstreet.org, Waltham-Forest. On Thursday, at the same time as today, we'll be having a masterclass on showing the world your best face, shop window and visual merchandising. It ain't all about online. We're also talking about actual shops where, after all, most business is still actually done, even during this COVID crisis. We'll be getting that from the brilliant John Abate. Next week, we'll be moving on to customer loyalty, making sure your business also is found in local search, and then looking at making data work for you in your local market. We hope you can join us at those events. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and very much, above all, I'd like to thank Emma for enlightening us. Thank you very much.